morning, sir.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Please sit down.
Thank you, sir.
Have we met
Indeed, sir. I believe a couple of years back I had come for the interview, sir.
for the interview?
Sir.
Okay. And where is your father posted these days?
So currently he's Director General of NHRC, sir.
Director General of
NHRC, sir. He recently got posted there, sir.
Human Rights
Sir.
Commission. All right. Okay. And you. अब मेरे ख्याल से सर पहले आप करें.
I want to ask you a few things. We
Sir.
have interviewed you before.
Sir.
We are very happy with a candidate of your kind, but I want to ask you a few things. How many marks did you get in the interview last time?
So I've given it twice. So once I got 190, second time I got 173, sir.
Second
Again,
time
come
you got a
again.
little less.
190 and
173, sir.
All right. Now you see, 190 seems to be more like a candidate of your kind performing. But I'm actually surprised that you got information service, that you did not get IPS or customs or ITS in your first attempt. So it obviously indicates that the returns में कुछ problem रहा होगा.
Indeed, sir.
That's one. We'll not bother you about that. My second problem is that you are highly qualified. You have MTech and now you have been in information service working with the IMMC and so on. So the bar is higher for you when you go in.
Sir.
I mean, you are from a background and you can get the same advice at home.
Sir.
The problem is that you have done very well, but just failed to crack it in the first attempt or the second attempt.
Sir.
So do you get a push this time to get what you want, IAS, IFS, IPS?
Sir.
I don't even count the things down below. So I hope you have done your written well. The other thing which made me a little curious is that you are a general category candidate.
Sir.
So you must have got on your own stream to daily biotechnology and MTech and everything. Aren't Yadavs in OBC in Haryana? No.
Sir, I believe they are. However, sir, because my father is in the services, so we're in the creamy layer, sir.
All right. So as long as you are a creamy layer, you can't take advantage of the OBC.
Indeed.
So I hope you don't need it. I will pass you straight away to Ambassador Swaroop.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Aniruddh, let's grill you a little bit on international affairs. Why did President Putin call his invasion of Ukraine a special military operation?
Sir, I believe that it was called a special military operation because, so the use of traditional terms such as war or an attack in the international sphere are not received positively internationally. So secondly, sir, initially the scope of the attack was not defined by President Putin, and it was not clear till about a month after the ostensible invasions started what the intention is, sir. So initially they had said that only areas of Luhansk and Donetsk would be affected. However, subsequently...
I'll take an issue with that.
Sir.
You are saying that a special military operation does not have defined aims.
So initially this special military operation did not...
No, I think the aim was very clearly defined from day one, from the day he announced it.
Sir.
And there were two aims with which he went into Ukraine.
Sir. I'm afraid I'm not aware of those.
Demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. These were the two aims. Okay, now it's been more than a year since the invasion was launched. How do you see the current state of the war?
Sir, I believe that in the past year, the war has evolved significantly. So one, to the extent that now we have players all across the world who have not now become stakeholders in the war. So especially countries such as United States. And so very recently, we have seen that traditionally neutral countries such as Finland and Sweden have also come on to join NATO. Sweden not as of now, sir. So additionally, we are seeing that there is more polarization in the world as countries are taking sides, such as China is ostensibly siding with Russia, while the NATO countries in US are siding with Ukraine. So thirdly, there's been a lot of disaster and deaths. So most recently, the leaks that came out of the United States show that the overall casualties in the war are more than 4 lakh. And so the number of deaths are a little over 50,000, sir. These are the three impacts that I see, sir.
What I meant was, how do you see the balance of forces between the two belligerents at this point in time? Is Ukraine winning? Is Russia winning? Is it a war of attrition? How do you see it panning out?
Sir, I believe that so we have initially, even though Russia had taken over a lot of areas, Ukraine subsequently got a lot of support, especially from the West. So for instance, we see that the United States over the past year has supplied weapons and funds to the extent of 1/3 of a country like India's defense budget. So this has significantly augmented the capacities of Ukraine to fight back. Additionally, sir, when we look at the data on casualties, we see that the Russian forces have suffered more casualties and fatalities. So with regard to the duration of the war, sir, I believe that like Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee had said, that any leader can start a war, that is in their hands, but where the war goes and how it ends and who all become part of it is something that only time will tell, sir.
So you think the war is no longer in President Putin's hands? He
Uh,
can't stop it.
So it does not seem like he can stop it because, so based on the Russian ammunitions that they had, based on how they're running out of funds, based on the fact that a lot of their global oil trade was stopped, based on the fact that their economy is not doing as well as they had thought. So it seems like they had hoped for a quick operation, which has now turned into a war that is lingering on. Sir.
Now, India has been blamed by the West as profiteering from the war by buying cheap Russian oil, which in turn adds to Putin's coffers, which in turn fuels the war machine. Do you think this criticism is justified?
So I believe that the primary allegation is based on facts. Yes, India has been buying fuel from Russia, and this fuel has also in turn made India a very large exporter of petroleum products in the past 3 months. However, sir, I feel that it is somewhat unfair that countries such as United States or NATO can unilaterally pose sanctions on countries such as Russia. And so even though Russia is in a state of war, it has its allies, it has its international relations with other countries. And India, being a country that advocates the principle of strategic autonomy, is very well within its rights to trade with Russia, be it in the US dollar or the Indian rupees.
No, so you're saying we are profiteering from the war, but we have every right to profiteer from the war.
Sir.
Is that what you're saying?
So I believe that it's not a criticism, it's just so the way it is. Sir. Yeah, so we are profiteering. Sir.
Now, it has been said that the Russia-Ukraine war will be the chief stumbling block to a joint communique coming out of the G20.
Indeed, sir.
Because Russia and China are refusing to accept the language that was adopted at Bali.
Sir.
So what is the way out? How do we save our G20 presidency?
Sir, I believe that a forum such as G20, as was earlier said by President Putin and Mr. Xi Jinping, is not the right forum to discuss something like the war. So the G20 has served as a great forum to discuss issues of finance, discuss issues
Yes, but the Western world has a point when they say that this war is directly impacting the global economy. It is impacting food security, is it impacting global inflation, it is impacting oil prices. So we have every right to comment on the war, because if this war ends, then the world will be in a much better place.
Absolutely, sir. Sir, but I feel that the G20 does not have the mandate as a forum to give any direction.
Then how did G20 come up with a statement, full paragraph, 3 paragraphs on Ukraine at the Bali summit, which Russia also did not oppose?
Sir, I believe that was in principle and did not have anything that binds any of the states with regard to the statement. So
if that is the case, then why are Russia and China objecting to a G20 communique from India? If it is not legally binding on them, then it's the same thing should apply. They should say, who cares? You issue whatever you want. So you are tying yourself up in knots.
Sir, I believe it also has to do with the fact that India, having maintained a neutral position, if in this particular instance under India's presidency, if there is a communique against Russia, it shows that perhaps India is siding more with United States. Perhaps that is also a reason why.
So Indonesia sided more with the United States.
I'm sorry, sir?
Indonesia sided more with the United States by issuing a joint communique which condemned Russia over Ukraine.
Perhaps so that is the impression that
Then why did Russia accept it? Russia is also a member of the G20. Russia should have vetoed it and said sorry, because G20 communique can only be issued if all 20 countries agree.
So actually, I'm not aware of what the exact statement on Ukraine was during the Bali summit.
No, then you have to be aware. I mean, how can you be appearing for the UPSC interview and
you are in the information service.
And you are in the Indian Information Service and say that I'm unaware of what information came out of Bali?
So,
I'll pass you on to Professor Tripathi.
Okay, Mr. Aniruddh Yadav, is it a bit far-fetched if I said that your MTech in biotechnology and your interest in studying causes and prevention of aging has some connection?
Absolutely, sir. So I was exposed to the research that was done in the field of aging during my undergrad and my postgraduate degrees, sir. And so subsequently I read a couple of books. So now it is the age of podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts. And this is a field, sir, where the recent research that has happened over the past 5 years has really grown leaps and bounds. So to the extent that now the World Health Organization says that aging is not something that is a natural progression of life, but it is a disease. It has been classified as a disease, sir, which is what ultimately piqued
Now
my
that you are
interest.
mentioning that some latest the podcasts and the latest material that I'm reading, you might have read about a case study that is being widely reported in media
Sir.
about a man's obsession to maintaining the body of a teenager,
Sir.
even though he's in 40s, and the kind of the regimen that he's going through.
Sir. So is this the individual from Germany, sir? Sir. So I had read about it, sir. So primarily this individual, sir.
So philosophically speaking, suppose if we surmount or if we win over the battle of the aging,
Sir.
and suppose we achieve immortality,
Sir.
then where do you see the population of this planet, say after 50 years?
So firstly, sir, the context of the aging research is not essentially to gain immortality, but it is to ensure a long and healthy life and to circumvent a lot of the problems that are
And
health problems.
this long
associated.
life that you were talking about,
Sir.
how long it should be?
Sir, about 100 to 120 years, sir, I think.
How do you know that the human aspiration will stop at 120? Somebody would like to live 150.
Absolutely, sir.
And then somebody would like to live to 200 years. And then they can amend the constitution. So, for example, there have been the leaders who could, the lifetime, they could be head of the states and they wouldn't want to die.
Sir.
Would it pose some ethical questions as well?
Absolutely, sir. Sir, the first ethical question that arises is the one of inequality, sir. So given that all of this research is done by companies that are the big pharma and access to them is only reserved for the rich, at least today. So secondly is the population issue, as you pointed out, sir. So we have seen that even in the past, sir, about 1,000 years ago, the life expectancy was 20 to 25. Sir, as recently as 1900, in the year 1900, the global life expectancy was a little under 40. So then today we are seeing a global life expectancy of 75. So the human endeavor to live longer is something that has been going on for a long time and will continue to go on. And so I believe that as we have found ways to deal and manage the population that we have in the past, this is certainly something that will be done in the future as well.
We're also a student of anthropology. So are you aware that some simple societies in the world, they have got, despite all the shortcomings in terms of the physical possession,
Sir.
nutritious food, and they can hardly buy the expensive the food and the biochemical support system. Still, they are living probably the longest.
Indeed, sir.
So what is detrimental? Is it the man who is trying to turn himself in a cyborg, the German gentleman that we were talking about, or just living closer to the nature, the wisdom that the simple societies or the tribal societies possess? We should try to rediscover that.
Absolutely, sir. Sir, I completely agree. And so a very interesting fact is that the research has found that age-old wisdom, as was studied by tribes earlier, and a lot of ancient civilizations also propagate, so such as eating healthy, not eating too much meat, sleeping at least 8 hours a day, exercising more than 200 minutes a week, is something that is shown to increase lifespan by more than 20%. And so it is a sort of rediscovery of what we already knew in the past. And in addition, sir, there are also a lot of supplements and a lot of new therapies that have come out to reduce aging. And so the particular zones that you spoke about, so that is primarily because of diet and genetics.
So you have also read a lot about the aging related, the cutting edge technologies. Are you aware of the 102 years old woman from Tamil Nadu? She is excelling in the academic pursuits at the age of 102.
I read an article about it so very recently. That I believe she was giving her senior secondary examination or 10th.
Exactly. She's 102 years old, and she does not take any supplements. She does not take any exercise, and she lives a very, very frugal life where you could say that she must be suffering from a lot of macronutrients deficiency as well. So I was talking about those hidden wisdom.
So I believe that in a lot of such cases, so these are the exceptions, not the norm. So a lot of people hit what they call the genetic lottery, And so despite any and all of their behaviors or habits, they don't seem to die as soon as they're supposed to. However, sir, the goal of the research is to find an effective way that can be replicated across a population, finding scientifically proven methods that unequivocally increase the lifespan.
Okay, there is another issue. All over the world, the indigenous societies, they are coming in conflict with the modern migrant societies. And so do you think there is something unethical about that? Because the indigenous society must be given precedence over all the natural, the wealth and their rights, but they are being almost exploited almost everywhere, be it America, be it Canada, be it Australia. And why in India, of course, there are the issues. So do you think that the modern humans are very unethical in terms of treating the people who have the first right to the resources where they have lived for the thousands of years?
Indeed, sir. So this is something that has been a history of what we say humankind, sir, as you had said with American Indians and even in parts of India. Sir, I believe it is very important to adhere to the tenets of what they call cultural relativism, to respect the traditional rights. So for instance, India has a policy of tribal panchil, where so one of the tenets is that we should respect the traditional rights of tribals on the forest and we should respect their customs. So I believe this should be a basis for policymakers and sir, all other stakeholders in their interaction with the indigenous communities.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I'm quite fascinated to read about your studying causes and prevention of aging.
Sir.
So I'll come back to that. So now we are all average 70. We may expect to live 90.
Sir.
But our life expectancy of the country may still go down. How and why?
So the life expectancy of a country is so primarily is something that it has two determinants: the number of people who are living and are getting born, and the number of people who are dying. So the only way the life expectancy can come down is if more number of people are dying. And very recently we saw the COVID pandemic, because of which we saw a large number of deaths in a short period of time.
Yeah.
So perhaps that can be.
Yeah. No, but I think that of course is an extraordinary situation. There is something called infant mortality. There is something called child mortality. So if IMR and child mortality is high, it is, when we talk of life expectancy, it is always average life expectancy.
Indeed, sir.
Isn't it? So children keep dying, so howsoever old I may become and healthy I may become, the overall expectancy will go down.
Sir.
So you need to relate. Secondly, what do you know about China and Japan?
Sir.
What the problem of aging in these two countries and what is the impact?
So Japan to a larger extent and China to a certain lesser extent have seen a rapidly aging population. So this is primarily because of two factors. So one, that the number of children being born in this country are relatively low. In China because of political reasons, and in Japan because of social reasons. And so secondly, the population of both these countries, because a lot of immigration in these countries is not allowed or not desirable. So they have seen a rapidly aging population, sir.
Okay, thank you. But do you study statistics of IMR and child mortality in India and in the neighborhood?
You have a month to prepare.
Sir.
And I'm afraid, Aniruddh, you need it. I was a little disappointed because the questions asked by Ambassador Swaroop, you did not respond with either alacrity or with specificity required of a person who has scored so high in interviews in past and is in information service. And after IAS, you have foreign service as your choice after IAS IPS. So I think there is no way you can absolve yourself from the responsibility कि अब तो मैं training में हूँ, तो I have to shut my mind to this, that's the kind of thing. Also, your interest in aging and disease, you are reasonably interested, but that's your special interest. That's not Professor Tripathi's special interest. But he could ask you a range of questions, and I would have been tempted to ask you what is the disease called in which a young man or a young child grows very fast and becomes an old man soon. Would you know that?
So I'm not aware of the names.
Well, you better check up on that also. So I think because these are the issues which pin you down to what your special interests are. So please go over your DAF again and try to see literary longevity जहाँ है हुंजा लैंड में है, कहाँ है Japanese में है, problems thereof, literary references back to Methuselah, Bernard Shaw talking about it, and things of that kind. If you are doing it, you have to do it more thoroughly. So look forward to you.
Two
doing
things
very well.
we advise everyone, and we must have told you 2 years ago. Master your DAF. Everything we asked you was from DAF, and we got fascinated when we heard aging is something very unusual. We have never come across any student with this interest. Surely, once we are curious, we'll ask you 100 questions on it. So, sit down with your DAF and identify 100, 120, 30 questions which are possible to arise out of your DAF. Okay? And specifically the ones in which we have shown interest. So, that's one. Secondly, news and current affairs. Read newspapers like textbooks, write notes if you are not doing it already. Start a diary if you have 1 month. 6, 7 items every day. Write down notes. 1 page, 1 item, keep on updating. And these 2 things will be very, very handy. Although having got 190, you should have been here and we should have been asking you how to get 190. Tell us in 2 sentences how to get 190.
Sir, I wish I knew, sir. My second interview went better than the first one, and I seem to score lesser in the second one.
All right. So, best of luck. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
But don't forget to shave.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
What will you wear?
Sir, I'll wear a suit. So I just have the one formal suit which has gone for dry cleaning currently.
Yeah, but you'll wear a suit.
Sir.
Yeah, that's what yeah. Otherwise, you're looking smart. I was just thinking to myself whether this itself will do.
Sir.
But if you are planning to wear a suit, that's a good idea. What is India's rank in football?
So it's 101 currently, so in the men's and 62 in the women's.
Correct.
Thank you, sir.